This week, we have the theme for the next World Youth Day. We look at how the Vatican is preparing for the Synod, and we visit the Lateran Basilica. Hello and welcome to Vatican Connections for the week of November 8th. This week we've all been focused on the preparations for the Extraordinary Synod on the Pastoral Challenges to the Family. The preparatory document for the Synod was officially released this week, and it's unlike any we've seen before. It includes 9 questions, including questions about hot-button issues like same-sex unions and teaching children with parents in irregular marriage situations, as well as pastoral care for people in difficult marital situations. The document and the questions were sent to the bishops' conferences around the world, along with a letter from the head of the Synod of Bishops instructing that the documents and the questions should be distributed as widely as possible in order to get input from the local level. This made news because the bishops of England and Wales decided to put the survey online for all Catholics in the UK to fill out. However, the bishops in different countries decide to get the local input, they must submit the feedback and relevant statistics to the Vatican by the end of January. A second meeting of the Synod of Bishops will happen in February, and the document will be further refined, as will the agenda for the October Synod. We now have the themes for the next 3 World Youth Days. Now remember, World Youth Day is celebrated every year at the diocesan level, and every 2 to 3 years a big international gathering is held. The theme for World Youth Day 2014, which will be celebrated at the Vatican on Palm Sunday, is "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." For World Youth Day 2015, also at the diocesan level, the theme is "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God." And for 2016, when the youth of the world gather in Krakow, Poland, the theme will be "Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy." You may recall in Rio de Janeiro this summer, Pope Francis asked young people to read the Beatitudes and make them the action plan for their lives. We may also see Pope Francis soon launching or promoting a new initiative against human trafficking. The Pontifical Academy of Science recently held a workshop on human trafficking. The Chancellor of the Academy, Monsignor Marcel Sanchez Sorondo, said he spoke with Pope Francis at breakfast at the Santa Marta residence one morning, and the Holy Father told him, "I want this work you are doing to continue because it is a very precious topic. I would like to do something with this material." The Holy See has made statements related to human trafficking and supported groups that study the phenomenon or work to end trafficking, but there hasn't been a Vatican document or letter specifically about human trafficking and its effects. Monsignor Sanchez Sorondo told an Italian news website that one idea that came out of their workshop was to create an international network to combat trafficking, but he said the Academy doesn't quite have the resources to do this yet. The Academy is scheduled to hold a second meeting on the topic in 2015. Cardinal Stanislaw Dziwisz served as Pope John Paul II's secretary for 39 years, beginning when he was still Archbishop of Krakow. In a new book-length interview with an Italian journalist, the Polish cardinal said it was a mistake to have John Paul II meet Martial Maciel in an audience in 2004. Cardinal Dziwisz says the Holy Father should not have received that individual, and goes on to say that at the 2004 meeting, John Paul II knew nothing of the rumors and allegations swirling around Maciel. The Cardinal says that was because of an extremely bureaucratic structure where departments refused to share information with each other. He also said that he finds it insulting when people suggest that John Paul II and Benedict XVI were opposed on how to deal with allegations of sexual abuse by priests. During the Assembly of the World Council of Churches in Busan, South Korea, the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, was asked about Christian unity and Pope Francis by Vatican Radio's Philippa Hitchen. Now, he said there are very fundamental and extremely important doctrinal and dogmatic differences between the Catholic and Anglican churches, and they must be worked on. However, he added, we need to make sure that we're working on them in the context of churches and ecclesial communities that say no sacrifice is too great to be obedient to the call of Christ, that we may be one. He said many barriers get put up when communities focus on power and prestige. And here's what came next in that conversation between Archbishop Welby and Philippa Hitchens.
Looking at you and Pope Francis on your first brief visit to Rome a few months ago, neither of you seem remotely interested in power and prestige. Does this give us a sense that we can expect some kind of surprising healing or reconciliation in the near future?
Well, I don't know. God has given you and given us all a great Pope. And he's a great Pope of surprises. I mean, he's a great one for surprises. And I think people are inspired and uplifted by what they see in Pope Francis. And as I am, I think he's a wonderful person. Now, whether there'll be surprises, yeah, I think there'll be one or two surprises. We're hoping we'll produce a few surprises.
And finally, Francis has a new assistant. Some media reports are calling him the Pope's new ghostwriter. Monsignor Paolo Braida is the new coordinator of papal speech and homily writing. He takes over from Archbishop Giampiero Gloder. Now, it might come as a shock to many, but not all the papal homilies and speeches are written entirely by the Pope. He writes some, and others are written by various dicasteries or offices according to the Pope's instructions. So he tells them what he wants included, and they write the speech. Of course, we've also seen that Pope Francis often sets aside his prepared text and speaks off the cuff, or doesn't use a pre-written homily at all. Monsignor Braida will no doubt have his hands full. Did you know? On November 5th, 1943, the Vatican was bombed for the first time. 5 bombs fell in the Vatican gardens, one of which did not explode. A mosaic restoration lab suffered considerable damage and lost priceless mosaics. This week was the 60th anniversary of the bombardment.
Ci sono aspettative motivate dalla fede che si collocano nel contesto della vita della Chiesa. E ci sono aspettative magari del mondo che non è credente, che sta al di fuori della Chiesa, quindi non bisogna confondere queste cose. La consultazione interna della Chiesa è una preoccupazione del Santo Padre, è un passo metodologico della preparazione del Sinodo. Le domande sono state indirizzate direttamente alle conferenze episcopali e saranno anche destinatari di queste domande i singoli vescovi diocesani. Ma certamente loro hanno anche la responsabilità pastorale di consultare la Chiesa affidata alla loro cura pastorale. Naturalmente il testo può essere messo su internet come è già presente, ciascuno può leggere, però non è un sondaggio di opinioni e soprattutto non è che noi facciamo dipendere il messaggio del Vangelo o il Magistero della Chiesa da un sondaggio di opinione. E soprattutto quello elettrico, dove quelli che esprimono la loro opinione non è necessariamente che siano cattolici o appartengano alla Chiesa o abbiano la fede, quindi non è una consultazione di questo tipo.
Time to flip through Pope Francis's daytimer and see what he's been doing this week. On Monday, Pope Francis celebrated Mass for the cardinals and bishops who died over the last year. It is a papal tradition that Pope Francis has continued. He said everything, even the worst demons, are powerless before the bond of love between Christ and the person who welcomes him in faith. Only human sin can interrupt this bond, he said. Even so, God seeks us out, comes after us to try to reestablish that bond. Even our sins are in God's hands, hands wounded by mercy. In those hands lie our hope of the final resurrection. Wednesday was the general audience. As usual, Pope Francis got the faithful involved. He spoke again about the communion of saints and what it means, this time focusing on charity. Catholic News Service has more.
Ogni incontro con Cristo, che nei sacramenti ci dona la salvezza, ci invita a andare e comunicare agli altri una salvezza che abbiamo potuto vedere, toccare, incontrare, accogliere e che è davvero credibile perché è amore. In questo modo i sacramenti ci spingono a essere missionari. E l'impegno apostolico di portare il Vangelo in ogni ambiente, anche in quelle più ostili, costituisce il frutto più autentico di un'assidua vita sacramentale, in quanto è partecipazione all'iniziativa salvifica di Dio che vuole donare a tutti la salvezza. La grazia dei sacramenti alimenta in noi una fede forte e gioiosa, una fede che sa stupirsi delle meraviglie di Dio e sa resistere agli idoli del mondo. E per questo è importante fare la comunione, è importante che i bambini siano battezzati presto, è importante che siano cresimati. Perché? Perché questa è la presenza di Gesù Cristo in noi, che ci aiuta. È importante, quando ci sentiamo peccatori, andare al sacramento della riconciliazione. No, padre, ho paura perché il prete mi bastonerà. No, non ti bastonerà il prete. Tu sai che incontrerei nel sacramento della riconciliazione a Gesù, Gesù che ti perdona. È Gesù che ti aspetta lì. E questo è un sacramento. E questo fa crescere tutta la Chiesa.
After delivering the catechesis, he put it into action. He said one act of charity or Christian love that highlights how we are all in communion is praying for someone. He asked the entire crowd to join him and pray silently for Noemi, an 18-month-old girl he visited just before the audience. Noemi is gravely ill, he said. After a moment of silent prayer, he led the faithful in a Hail Mary for Noemi's health. Pope Francis met with the Venezuelan leader of the opposition, Enrique Capriles. Now, this meeting wasn't on his schedule at the beginning of the week. One meeting that was on his agenda at the start of the week was his meeting with Laura Chinchilla, the president of Costa Rica. And on Saturday, he was scheduled to meet with the president of Nigeria and have an audience with members of an Italian organization that accompanies the sick and elderly on pilgrimages to Lourdes. And there were a few more nominations to tell you about this week. The Latin Vicariate of Aleppo has a new apostolic vicar. Father George Abu Kazan will lead this vicariate. Until now, that see was vacant, and Father Kazan was acting as an administrator. That changes with this appointment. Bishop Salvatore Matano has been appointed to Rochester, New York. He was the Bishop of Burlington, Vermont until now. Rochester has been without a bishop since September of 2012, when the previous bishop retired. There is a new bishop in San Pedro, Paraguay, and he is Canadian, Father Pierre Jubenville. He is a member of the Congregation of the Holy Spirit, He's been a missionary in various countries and filled a variety of roles. Most recently, he has been the first general assistant to his congregation. Another notable fact about this diocese, San Pedro is the same diocese where Fernando Lugo was bishop until 2005. He famously, or infamously, asked to be laicized after running for and winning the election for president of Paraguay. This move to bring in a foreign bishop for San Pedro could be a sign that it's time for a new approach. The Pontifical Council for the Laity said goodbye to 2 longtime collaborators and welcomed 2 new members to their team. Father Eric Jacquinet was the head of the Council's youth sector since 2008. One of his major projects was the International World Youth Days. Now, taking up the role in his place is Father João Chagas. Father Chagas is from Brazil, and he is with the Shalom community. He has been working alongside Father Jacquinet for the last 2 years, so this should be a fairly smooth transition. The Council for the Laity also has a sector dedicated to sports, and a year ago, the head of that sector, Father Kevin Lixie, left the Council to take on another role with his own congregation. We learned this week that Santiago Perez de Camino is the new head of the sports sector for the PCL. Perez de Camino is a young layman from Spain. He worked for World Youth Day Madrid, where he was in charge of the visa process for pilgrims, no small task, and organized the closing soccer game between Atletico Madrid and a team of international all-stars. Now, the notice posted on the Council's website says he has been in the position since April 2013, but the change was just made public this week. Vatican Connections is interactive. Send us your questions or comments by Facebook, Twitter, email, or post. Via email, send comments to info@saltandlighttv.org. And by post, send letters to 114 Richmond Street East, Toronto, Ontario, M5C 1P1, Canada. This week we celebrate the feast of the dedication of the Basilica of St. John Lateran. So our Roman profile takes a look at that historic basilica.
The history of St. John Lateran, with its ecumenical councils, as the Cathedral of Rome, it has a very, very, very dense history, and that decoration very much reflects the vicissitudes of not only the church in the sense of the building, but really in the church in the greater sense as well. The beauty of St. John Lateran is the idea that the triumph that we're celebrating is the battle that made Rome Christian. And the only people who ever died to make Rome Christian, they were Christians. And this is the triumph of the witness of the martyrs. That church is the triumph of the men and women who threw themselves at that Roman machine for centuries, bearing witness to Christ, bearing witness to the truth of the Gospels, until finally 313 an emperor listened and allowed them to build a church. I mean, it is a unique victory in the ancient world. When you read Eusebius, who describes the building of this church, he was alive during the last major persecution, the persecution of Diocletian, which began around 301. And this was the persecution that was supposed to be the definitive one. He was going to smoke out and rid the world of Christians. So Eusebius was alive, on the run during that persecution. He lives long enough to see Diocletian's persecution fall, to see Constantine rise, the legalization of Christianity, and the construction of the first church in the world. I mean, when he writes about it, he writes with this sense of this jubilance, which is just wonderful to listen to. And I think that that's the feeling we're supposed to feel when we walk into that church, that reminder that no matter how dark, dim things are, the church, it will always get up, it will always keep going, and it will always triumph.
That's all for this week. Thanks for watching, and join us next time as we bring you more of what's happening inside the Vatican walls.